Welcome to episode 178 of the weekly Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is the captain of the USS Secure Ideas, Captain Kevin Johnson.
Here's what makes that so funny. I like that is extra funny to me right now because we're going out to a conference next week, which I guess by the time this gets published will be this week, but we're going out to the Wild West Hacking Fest in Reno, and we're going to be giving away shirts and stuff. And we had to do this form for people to fill out to get their swag. And we're like, oh man, how do you do it? And one of the guys like, oh, we should use Pirate Ship, and not a sponsor. And and they signed up for it. And all day I've been being called Captain Kevin because Pirate Ship. Yeah. So I just
how appropriate.
Absolutely hilarious that you introduced me that way.
I was going for the Star Trek reference, but
I know.
Hey, I'll take that too.
I know, but we'll go with the Pirate Ship reference.
That's great. Awesome. Well, we have quite a few topics to cover today. Lots of news this week, of course. Every week is the same. There's always great news to talk about, I think. But a follow-up from last week's episode where we talked about Amazon Sidewalk. Had a few comments from listeners that just thought we should clarify that, and this is a very important point, that this the Amazon Sidewalk does not affect all Amazon products ever created.
Yeah.
Right. We're only talking about a very small select grouping of Amazon products. And we're, in fact, like when we talk about Ring products in particular, we're only talking about floodlight and spotlight cams.
Yeah.
The latest generations of those.
I don't know if we said this last week, but I really feel like this is one of those examples that people want to hate on Amazon and they want to get their name associated with some cool zinger on something. You know what I mean? I really do, because the stuff that I'm reading that people are posting, it's almost as dumb as the idea that the vaccine would make spoons stick to you, which is something else I've been hearing on Twitter.
Or you'll get 5G.
Or you get, hey man, I'm still waiting for my cell signal to improve after my vaccination, and I'm really disappointed.
It's very disappointing. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Yeah. I mean, a ton. Like I couldn't believe, even on I watched the local news, and the newscaster even said this affects all Amazon devices, and I wanted to just like strangle the guy through the TV. Yeah. So it's the
same thing as like people are saying, oh well, anybody will be able to connect to your wireless. It's like no, this is very, very specific, and we can disagree with why they're doing it or not like they're doing it or whatever, but stop making crud up. All you do when you make stuff up is you undermine any legitimacy your argument may have had. Right. So, sorry.
Yeah. So if you want the full list, you can go to our website. We have that in our show notes. But yeah, it's, Echo Dot, Echo Plus, Echo Show, a couple of the other Echo devices, but it's a small list. So just want to keep that in mind for everybody. But the big news this week that definitely wanted to talk about was the FBI, them being involved in this global sting operation, where they had a essentially fake encrypted phone with a messaging app. It was called ANOM, not suspicious at all.
No, not at all.
And they essentially tricked the criminal underground to use this device to send secure, in quotes, communication to other criminals. I think this is just fascinating. Is that the wrong word?
There's so many interesting things here, right? Like, let's ignore criminals for a second. How are you vetting the security of your product? Because obviously, right. My understanding, what I got a kick out of was, somebody was providing encrypted communication to criminals, and that person got arrested.
Yeah.
And so there was this hole in the market, which by the idea that we refer to it as a market, I giggle at, right? Like that, it is, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I giggle because we're wrong. I'm giggling because it exists. And so the FBI worked with a guy, and he released his product, the ANOM, and people used it. Like it just kept like, and on top of that, like they were not even codifying their communication, right? They had such a trust in the encrypted communication that they spoke bluntly, like, yeah, let's kill that guy.
Yeah.
Right. Like not oh, we should try to, make that person unavailable for breathing or something, right? Like, I don't know.
I really like the way that they spread this device amongst the criminal community too. So you had to have an invite code from another criminal that had the device. So it was more likely that another criminal would get the device. So kind of keeping it in that community. I thought that was just genius.
When I read about that, I just laughed at, do you remember when Gmail was invite only? And you constantly heard people saying like, hey man, anybody got a Gmail invite? Or that's what I feel like the criminals are doing. Hey, anybody got an ANOM invite? But now of course the question becomes, right? Like, what's next? Okay, so they're arresting all these people, they're dealing with all this stuff. There's major corruption cases coming out of this because of, the quote unquote representatives. I'd like to believe they're not representative of us, but that got arrested, and the political people, the criminals are going down. Okay, 6 months from now, is there another encrypted device that people are using? Are they going to be pushed? Are the criminals going to learn that maybe we should vet these some? Right? I don't know. Like what happens next? But this one was crazy. It was totally crazy.
Yeah.
I am interested, and I haven't seen the details. I am interested in like there were some limitations to what the FBI did with it. Like they captured this data for Australia, but they didn't do it for the US, or that kind of stuff. That was, and I'm curious about court orders or privacy rights, or like what drove those, or just political expediency.
Yeah, I was reading the one article that there was, I guess, like the reason they had to end the sting so soon, because I mean they could have let this, kept going or whatever, was there was a warrant that was coming up in one country that they had to, where I guess a lot of these criminals were at, so they had to just end it somehow. And I think what I've read,
that makes sense, right? The court order is going to expire. It's going to become public. You might as well shut it down. What I'm curious about is the way I read it, maybe I read it wrong, is that like the FBI forwarded the full details to like Australia, but they didn't record the full details. If you were a criminal using it in Florida, talking to a criminal in Tennessee, they didn't record the full detail. But if you were a criminal in Florida talking to, I don't know, Australia, right? They did record it. And I'm curious why they made those decisions. And I've seen some conspiracy theories around it. I've seen some, our own politicians don't want to get caught or something. I don't know. But it's curious.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see like what kind of precedent this sets for future investigations. And I know this isn't the first time the FBI has done. There's been things on a smaller scale. I mean, I remember years ago, this is how they were catching criminals using Tor, was they actually had them install malware, which basically found out what exit node they were coming out of and those types of things. So this isn't like groundbreaking that law enforcement is kind of going down the road, but I find it fascinating that they're getting more creative. And I think it is kind of a wake-up call to the underground criminal community that like these products and services are going to be inherently hard to trust for your
and I'm curious from I distrust government in general, right? How much further is this type of not to start a rant point, but there are many people in the government, in the Department of Justice, that are arguing for encryption backdoors widespread, because that's what this was. This was
totally,
like you referred to it as a fake encryption app, and I know that is technically correct, but the app was actually encrypting.
It was just sending stuff through. It was copying it and sending it off.
And they had a decryption key for when they got it. So that's a backdoor. That is an option of what they are demanding in encryption in general. And so I'm actually a little worried about the precedent this sets for that, right?
Yeah, good point.
Because this is one of the things I've always found interesting is very often we will be okay with a violation of rights, the law, the whatever, if the bad people are being punished. We don't look at the fact that that same action can be used against the not bad people, right? I just read a headline. I'll acknowledge I just read the headline. I've not read the article yet, where they were talking about, pre-policing students based on a variety of things where they could determine whether they were going to commit a crime and then preventing them and punishing them for the crime they had not yet committed. It's the same type of thing, right? If they have this back door here, what's to stop them from moving it elsewhere? How do we handle that? How do we prevent that? Because the bad group today is not necessarily the same group tomorrow. And it's very, very easy. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I'm not to bring it back to the Constitution, but the First Amendment, right? You're not really a supporter of the First Amendment unless you support free speech for people you hate. I do not like criminals. I'm thrilled that they were able to arrest these people that were killing people and harming people. And I'm very happy that bad people are being punished. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with how they were caught. I don't know. I'm not yet at the point where I definitely disagree with it, but I'm also not at the point where I'm like, yeah.
It's interesting stuff for sure. Spring and summer are upon us, and that means it's time for some much needed vacation time with friends and family. But this also means that you need to be aware of data privacy and how to protect your laptops, smartphones, and key fobs while traveling. Airports and other public areas can often be targeted by attackers looking to gain access to your devices through their wireless signals. So instead of worrying about disabling or turning off wireless functions, it's so much easier to place them in a Faraday bag when they're not being used. And if you want the best protection that you can get, you want to be using Silent Pocket's premium Faraday bag product line that blocks all wireless signals. So don't forget to get yourself a Faraday bag before you head out on your vacation. And right now, you can use discount code SharedSecurity and receive 10% off your order during checkout at silentpocket.com.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity to learn how to build a self-defending team.
So there were more details that came out this week, or this past week, if you're listening to us on Monday, about the Colonial Pipeline. And the CEO of Colonial Pipeline testified to Congress, and we found out that the way they were breached was through their VPN, through a weak password, because they don't have two-factor authentication on this VPN.
Or on that account, maybe.
Or on that account.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
We could speculate on that. But yeah. So that was interesting. So kind of the source of the breach there. But I also found it fun and interesting and ironic that a weak password was also the reason that the FBI ended up getting the ransom back for Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah.
So
two things I have. One thing I got to ask is, and I've not found anywhere, what's the chance the password they got from the attackers, right, to get the ransomware back, the ransom back, was because those attackers were using ANOM?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I also want to point out that I am, and I'm sure you are as well, very aware that last week we joked that we had no Colonial Pipeline stories, and we did joke we probably will cover one next week.
And we did.
Not intentional. So yeah, but talking about the ransomware, getting the ransomware back, that makes perfect sense. If you're not, I don't know how they got the password, whether it was a weak password and they guessed it, or whether they compromised one of the members of the people who had it, or whatever. The flip side of that, that's something that I think is very telling. We see constantly, I know you do as well, Tom, right? Where organizations are trying to do everything they can to be secure, and they just don't keep up, and they don't do the right thing across the board. The number of organizations that have not turned on MFA as a requirement, not turned on MFA on sensitive accounts, and right. And I still, it's 2021, it's June of 2021, and I still hear from people, wow, don't you understand how difficult MFA is for the users? No, it is not. Stop saying that. And if you have users who are like, oh, MFA is hard, you have the wrong users. Or you've implemented it wrong. You've made it hard on them, right? MFA has multiple options, and it's so easy to pick ones that work for your user base, and yet people don't do it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was a VPN. I've got to ask, were they running a VPN software or hardware device that didn't support MFA, and that's why it wasn't turned on? In which case, okay, security vendor, step up your game.
Yeah, and we don't know the details, and we definitely don't want to shame and
no
secure organizations that fall victim to a breach because of that, right? We know it's hard, and we don't know the circumstances, but I do
wonder. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you go on.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, all right. I was just going to say, but I do find it funny that a criminal or the criminals that were involved had a similar problem, which caused them to lose all their money as well.
Yeah.
So,
I am curious. This does make me think about. Do you remember when Equifax was popped?
Mm-hmm.
The Senate brought the CEO in, and it was like, oh man, what happened? And the CEO said on the floor of the Senate, we were missing a patch, and there's this one dude that was, and he said it differently, but right, there's this one dude whose job it was to patch this, and he didn't, and that's why we got popped. I'm curious if that's type of that, because you and I both know that testimony from Equifax was crud. There is no way that there's one person and it's solely responsible. And if it is, then you've got enough other problems. So I'm curious if this testimony is the same. I'm not saying it is, because what they described is absolutely likely. It's absolutely possible, right?
Sure.
But I'm curious. I'm hesitant to trust testimony in front of Congress quite often.
Because it's Congress.
No, I didn't say that. I do.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So our last story, though, related to that, kind of around passwords, there was some researchers from a firm called Agari. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but they planted thousands of fake credentials, probably in your typical, dark web forums, other areas that
they said
they get these collected from by criminals, but they said half of the accounts, and these were all fake accounts, by the way, they weren't real compromised accounts, but half of them were accessed in about 12 hours of putting that information up to the site, and 20% were actually accessed within an hour. With 40% accessed within 6 hours. So, I think the fact that, and I don't know why they had to put a study together to prove this, but
So let me get this right. Your study here's your hypothesis. I hypothesize that a hacking web forum will use the credentials I give them within a period of time after I give them the credentials. You're a genius.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yes. And you know what? They probably had $1 billion grant from the government. But it actually irritates me that we're covering this story. I'm glad we covered it so I could be irritated.
Yes.
All we're doing is giving this company attention. You know what? A test that I would have liked to see? Push a repo to GitHub with credentials in it. that appear to be by accident. See how long those credentials. How long does it take an attacker to discover them, right? This study was like, you know what? We went last night. We got a bunch of the people from the company in the Jacksonville. It's not a meeting. We just had some people come in, and last night we did the let's go to dinner. And there's this amazing Kim's Korean barbecue across the street. I recommend it highly. Not a sponsor. And so we go there. As we're leaving, now the staff members, some of them brought family, kids, whatever. As we're leaving, Kim, the owner of the restaurant, gave the kids all ice cream.
Yeah.
So I bet you we could do a similar study. Do you know that within 2 minutes of the ice cream being handed to every kid, they licked it? You handed ice cream to children, and this article expects us to believe that it's surprising that the children ate the ice cream. My goodness. We gave passwords to attackers, and within hours, I would argue that if it took them 12 hours to use the account, you did it wrong. I just don't know. Or you were on a forum that's just not popular.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, there could be better security research around that. I like the GitHub idea. That's pretty cool.
I'm sorry?
I like the GitHub idea.
Yeah, I thought of it when I read this article.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they do that? Right? Like, or like, I don't know, just
Pastebin or
in different sites, accidentally, go on Facebook, create a fake Facebook profile, friend a whole bunch of people. I mean, we've never done that.
Use one of Kevin's 100 fake accounts.
Yeah, I got lots. And, post a meme of your password. Like, man, my password is this. See how long it takes somebody to use it, right? That's a study. How active are they going and finding passwords? Not, well, I gave them passwords and they took 12 hours to use. God, man. That's just stupid. Whoever the people are that did this research are either geniuses because they convinced some idiot to fund them, or they're idiots. I don't know which one it is.
Kevin's opinion only.
You agree with me.
I do. But...
okay. So,
well, with that, what fun stories this week. So thank you, Kevin, for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll have more fun to talk about next week, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everyone. That's all for this week's show. Be sure to follow the Shared Security Show on Twitter and Instagram for the latest news and show updates. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.